Please renew your bodhicitta as we resume the teaching session. The principle of recitation has 3 essential states and so on. So when practicing the deity at the level of Kriya Yoga, then one practices by means of 3 essential states, 3 great images, 3 objects of concentration, and 4 branches. So we've just finished going through the 3 essential states. Now we'll move on to look at the remaining 3 great images, 3 objects of concentration, and so on. So now let's move on to the 3 great images. The 3 great images are, first of all, the image of the body, which consists of meditating in that manner, visualizing the deity's body with the major and minor marks. So first of all, the image of the body. First of all, note about the word image. This word image also means reflection. It's the same word in Tibetan used for reflection, like the reflection of a moon in water. So the word itself implies that the appearance, the deity's form that is appearing here, appears yet lacks reality. It's an illusory, unreal appearance. It appears yet it lacks reality. It's not a solid, truly established appearance. So this image, this illusory image of the body, which consists of meditating in that manner. So what do we mean by in that manner? In accord with the way just explained above, in accord with the way explained in the context of the 3 essential states. The deity's body is visualized with the major and minor marks. So all deity's bodies, all bodies of enlightened beings are adorned with the 32 major and 18 minor marks, and that is how we visualize them. Then we have the image of the mind, which consists of meditating on the moon disk in the deity's heart, symbolizing bodhicitta. So we visualize the body of Avalokiteshvara, for example, as just explained, and then we meditate on the mind, the enlightened mind of Avalokiteshvara, in the form of a moon disk in the deity's heart. So in the heart center of Avalokiteshvara, you visualize a moon disk. This moon disk is a symbol or expression of bodhicitta. And then we have the image of speech, the mantra disposed upon the latter. So often in deity practices, in the deity's heart center, we will visualize their seed syllable, like hung, and that will be surrounded by the mantra Garland, so their essential mantra, like Om Mani Padme Hum, for instance. And in that case, the seed syllable in the center will symbolize the deity's mind. Here, however, in the context of Kriya Yoga, one visualizes a moon disk in the deity's heart to symbolize their mind. And on top of this moon disk, then, is their enlightened speech, symbolized by their mantra. So this is how we have to visualize with these images or reflections of enlightened body, mind, and speech. So that sums up the 3 images. Now, the 3 objects of concentration, these refer to the 3 images. During the recitation, one must focus on the wisdom deity in front and concentrate on all 3 images, hence 3 objects. So concentration here means to focus, right? To place your attention, to direct your attention, to place your attention on a certain object or reference point. There's a lot we could say actually about this word and the various connotations of this word, translated here as concentration. But anyway, in this context, it refers to the object of our focus, we could say. The 3 objects of concentration are the 3 images. So what are we concentrating on here? We're concentrating on the image of the body, the image of the mind, and the image of the speech, the deity's body, mind, and speech, as explained, right? As just explained. In the context of Kriya Yoga, this current context, we visualize the wisdom deity in front of us. That's why it says here, during the recitation, so while practicing the mantra recitation, one must focus on the wisdom deity in front of oneself, and while doing that, concentrate on all 3 images, the deity's body, mind, and speech. These are the 3 objects. So actually, these 3 objects are the same as the 3 great images, but here they're presented as a way to practice, right? A way to train. So here Mipham Rinpoche in his commentary has shown us such a great kindness by explaining all of these points so clearly, by unraveling the meaning of Guru Rinpoche's commentary and explaining these points so lucidly for us. So again, the 3 great images and the 3 objects, they're basically referring to the same thing. One is just describing them in terms in the context of practice, actual practice, what we're focused on. But the real meaning of the two is the same. So now let's move on to the 4 branches. These are 4 separate branches of the recitation, namely the 3 objects of concentration together with oneself as the meditational deity performing the recitation. So these 4 branches are separate branches of the recitation practice, namely the 3 objects of concentration just mentioned, together with oneself as the meditational deity, performing the recitation. So altogether, this makes 4, right? The 3 objects of concentration we just went through, plus the oneself as the meditational deity, the self-visualization. So 3 plus 1 equals 4. These are the 4 separate branches of the recitation. These may also be condensed into 2 objects of concentration. Those 2 objects of concentration would be the concentration focused on the front visualization and the concentration of the self-visualization, these 2. They can also be condensed into the 3 branches, which is just another way of formulating the 3 images and objects of concentration mentioned above, and so on. Thus, although one is not oneself the deity, one's stream of being is viewed as the deity on account of its one day appearing to be transformed through the causes and conditions. So although one is not presently the deity, it's understood that one day, due to various causes and conditions, one will become the deity, and that is why at present, one practices viewing oneself as the deity. So what are the causes and conditions here? Well, the cause is reality. The same word was translated as principles in the previous paragraphs. But principles meaning the various aspects of reality, the way things are. That is the cause for this transformation. And the conditions are these various aspects of practice, the 3 essential states, the 3 great images, the 3 objects of concentration, and so on. All of these act as conditions, bringing about a transformation, transforming one into the deity in the future. So this is why and how one visualizes or regards oneself as the deity. As an aid to the practice, one meditates on a drawing or statue as the image of the body of whichever deity of the 3 families one has faith in. So, as an aid and a support for one's practice, one makes use of a drawing or statue. So, an illustration, a painting, a tanka, and so on, or a statue, a molded image of the body of whichever deity of the 3 families one has faith in. So, the 3 families are the 3 Buddha families of Vajra, Lotus, and Buddha. And depending on where your faith and aspiration lies, then you practice one of the deities of these families. So it could be Avalokiteshvara or Vajrapani, and so on. One also meditates on the images or symbolic attributes of the mind of the 3 families. So whichever deity or family you aspire to, then you also meditate on the images, the symbols of the enlightened mind of those deities. So it could be a moon disk, as was mentioned in the commentary, just a paragraph or 2 earlier. It could equally be a sun disk or a lotus. The specific image will depend on the text, and it's always important to follow the specifics of the text that one is practicing. So if you're practicing Tara, for instance, then the symbol of mind, enlightened mind, will differ to, say, Avalokiteshvara, and so on and so forth. So in this way, one meditates also on the images or symbolic attributes of the mind of the 3 families, in other words, on the 3 mudras, the holding Samaya mudra, the concentration Samaya mudra, and the meditation Samaya mudra. So what does holding mean? Holding means to hold or bind or fix in place. Samaya refers to one's sacred commitments, right? So in order to accomplish the deity, one needs to maintain one's commitments purely. One needs to have pure untainted samaya. To whom do we need to keep these commitments? Well, to our gurus, the gurus from whom we receive empowerment, and also to the deity. So, the holding samaya mudra of pure samaya to the gurus and deities. The word mudra itself, we could translate it into English as seal, means unchanging. It has many other layers of meaning, but that's one of them, unchanging. To go back to the word samaya, samaya also has the meaning of to not transgress, to not break or transgress or go beyond. So this holding Samaya Mudra, this refers to the practitioner. This is oneself, the practitioner. Sorry, rather in general, Samaya in this context refers to oneself, the practitioner. So we have the holding Samaya Mudra as explained, then the concentration Samaya Mudra and the meditation Samaya Mudra. So meditation here refers to the symbolic attributes of the deity, as will be explained next. The first of these, the holding Samaya Mudra, refers to the Vajra and bell held by the practitioner. So held and also crossed across one's chest, right? Well, often this symbolic gesture is made with the Vajra and bell, and that indicates that these are held, this indicates how they bind. So that is the holding Samaya Mudra. It refers to the Vajra and bell and so on held by the practitioner. The second, the concentration Samaya Mudra, refers to the symbolic attributes of the wisdom deity's mind, such as the lotus, Vajra, sword, and so forth. So the various insignia or its symbolic attributes that express the deity's mind. And third, the meditation Samaya Mudra refers to the symbolic attributes of the minds of the meditational deity and wisdom deity. So these would typically be seed syllables like Om Ah Hung, Om Hung Dram Shri Ah, seed syllables that express the wisdom minds of the deity. So these three mudras just mentioned are basically the same, are basically describing the very same things, the very same aspects of practice as were described before, just from a slightly different angle, just in a slightly different formula. But the basic points, the main points of these three, are the same as the various sets of 3 points and so on that were described above. Furthermore, there is the image of speech referring to the recitation. So we just went through these 3 mudras and explained how one meditates on the mind of the deity by concentrating on their symbolic attributes and so on. So furthermore, there's the image of speech, which refers to recitation, meaning the mantra recitation, reciting the mantra of the deity, and this itself has 3 aspects: certainty, uninterruptedness, and completeness. And we spoke about this. We spoke about these points in another context a few weeks ago when I was teaching the generation stage practice. So we spoke about how when practicing the generation stage, one measures one's practice in 3 different ways, either according to the time, the number of mantras one accumulates, or signs. So certainty relates to this. Certainty about, okay, how many mantras am I going to accumulate? Am I going to accumulate 100? Am I going to accumulate, say, 1 million, 10 million, several 100,000? If it's the money mantra, then at the very least you should accumulate 600,000, 100,000 for each syllable. Then uninterruptedness. So if you decide to stay on retreat, say for a month, well then you need to stay on retreat for a month, just as you've decided, without interrupting that commitment, without interrupting that practice. That's the second aspect. And then thirdly, completeness. So one's practice in terms of time, continuity, and so on, needs to be complete. So then we have some further explanation. Certainty refers to the performance of the recitation in accordance with the promise one has made. So my explanation just now of these 3 aspects was in the wrong order. So certainty, to correct myself, certainty here refers to, just as it said, the performance of the recitation in accordance with the promise one has made. So one decides, okay, I'm going to accumulate this many mantras. And then one keeps one's promise. So whether it be, well, in terms of the money mantra, the minimum accumulation would be 600,000 mantras. You could accumulate 1,200,000 or 1 million or more. 10 million or more. In any case, however many you commit to accumulate, you must follow through with that commitment. And Okay, and then we have uninterruptedness. So uninterruptedness refers to the absence of faults during the recitation, yawning, coughing, ordinary conversation, and so forth. So when you are practicing recitation, you should do it one-pointedly and without disturbing your recitation with any other ordinary talk, including even yawning, coughing, and the like. So you should recite the mantra one-pointedly without interrupting that recitation. And then we have completeness, which refers to the completion of the number of times the mantra is to be recited. Oh, sorry. So now I the translator, need to correct myself. So you commit to reciting a certain number of mantras, however many it might be, and then completeness refers to following through with that promise, right? Completing the number of mantras that you have pledged to recite, and to go back to certainty. This refers to practicing for staying in retreat staying in retreat just as you've pledged to. So whether you have pledged to stay in retreat for 1 month or 3 months or 6 months or however long you stay in retreat, you commit to your practice for that period without interrupting. There are other requisites. These comprise above all one's outer conduct, cleanliness and pure spheres of activity, outer and inner ablutions, and so on. So one also needs to keep certain aspects of external conduct, we could say cleanliness or ritual hygiene. So one needs to keep a pure diet, wear pure or clean clothes, and also keep clean. Particular times for engaging in the practices. So when you begin a retreat, you should begin it on an auspicious day. So an auspicious day in the first half of the lunar month, so during the waxing phase of the moon, either on the 8th or 10th lunar day, or on another auspicious day, a special anniversary of the Buddhas, and so on. On these particular times, you should begin your practice. And astrologically auspicious days of the week, such as Thursday, and lunar mansions such as Pushya. So it does make a difference. The day that we begin our practice on, these things do make a difference. We should pay attention to these details. It's held that through the power of bringing together the image of the body, the symbols of the mind, the recitation of the mantra, and the outer requisites, along with the view, the cause, and the outer and inner requisites, the conditions, accomplishment will be attained. So by bringing together these various factors, together with the view, the cause, what do we mean by the view here? Well, the view here refers to an understanding of reality. Reality being the fact that all sentient beings have Buddha nature, that all phenomena are emptiness. This understanding is the view, this is the cause. So here, the view, the cause, refers primarily to Buddha nature, being aware that all beings have Buddha nature Sugatagarbha pervades all sentient beings without exception. What do we mean by Sugatagarbha? Well, self-awareness. It's natural cognizance, natural awareness. That is the fiber of the basic nature of all beings. And this Buddha nature itself is emptiness. It is nothing truly established. It itself is emptiness. So, along with the view, the cause, as just explained, and the outer and inner prerequisites, the conditions. So these outer and inner requisites, which act as conditions, are the various aspects of one's outer conduct, cleanliness, particular times, astrologically auspicious days, and so on, that we just went through, and the previous factors, bringing together the image of the body, the symbols of the mind, and so on. These refer to the 3 images, principles, and so on that were explained just earlier on in the text. By bringing together all of these factors, accomplishment will be attained. And what do we mean by accomplishment here? Well, the Sanskrit would be siddhi. What we mean by accomplishment or siddhi is the state of enlightenment. Here, Here, although Padmasambhava indicates separately how on the ultimate level everything is devoid of arising and cessation, and how on the relative level one meditates on the deity, he does not mention how the relative fields of experience are viewed as pure or impure, nor does he mention the particularities of the result. The reason for this is that, having said that in relative truth one should meditate that everything is the deity, there is no need for him to say in relative truth view everything as the deity. It is in accordance with how one has established the view that one then trains with concentration. For there should be no conflict between the view and the meditation. It is necessary to have both knowledge and feet. So just as described, just as taught in the Noble Sutra recollecting the three jewels. Feet refers to meditation, and knowledge or awareness refers to the eyes of the view. It's necessary to have both the view and meditation. Another reason is that the secret mantra texts have as their object perfectly pure fields of experience. The result of the practice is not mentioned separately because although the common activities and accomplishments are not alike, the supreme accomplishment is the same, unsurpassable enlightenment. So I don't feel we need to say much about this passage because the meaning of this passage has actually been covered above. We've already discussed the meaning of what's said here earlier. So what's being said here is that to meditate on the deity is to view everything as the deity, to, we could say, recognize everything as the deity. So if you have not yet understood that everything actually is the deity, the nature of the deity, then you shouldn't meditate on everything as the deity. So one's meditation on the deity should be preceded by an understanding of the view that acknowledges the natural purity of all appearance and existence. In short, the view that acknowledges the purity and equality of all things. So now we move on to the presentation of the Ubaya Tantra. So we have the three outer tantras are Kriya, Upa or Ubaya, and Yoga. So we've covered Kriya, now we move on to Ubaya, or this is often just referred to as Upa Tantra. And these two are very similar, so it'll be quite easy for us to move through this presentation. Ubaya Tantra is often called Jewel Tantra because it practices the conduct of Kriya and the view of Yoga, or we could say the view of Upa. But so it borrows the conduct of Kriya and practices the view of Yoga. The view of those who have engaged in the vehicle of Ubaya Tantra is held to be as follows. So the commentary continues in this way. On the ultimate level, there's no arising or cessation, and on this basis they meditate on the relative level, on the formed body of the deity. The expression meditative concentration endowed with four principles refers to the principles of one's own nature, the principle of the deity, the principle of concentration, and the principle of recitation. So these very four principles we already covered and discussed in the context of Kriya Yoga. So they've already been explained, they're just mentioned here again by name. So these same four principles are practiced. The principle of one's own nature is the visualization of oneself as the meditational deity. So visualizing the self-visualization. Viewing oneself as the deity. The principle of the deity is the invitation of the wisdom deity, who subsequently remains directly in front of one, level with one's brow. So just like in the practice of Kriya Tantra, we visualize ourselves as the deity, and then we invite the wisdom deity who is present in front of us. The principle of concentration is the arrangement of the moon disk in the heart of the deity visualized in front and in one's own heart, so in both the front and self-visualization's heart. As it says here, while visualizing oneself as the deity, together with the seed syllable encircled by the mantra that is read around it. The principle of recitation is a recitation that is free of the 10 faults and combined with one's breath. So it is combined with one's breath in the following way. As one breathes out, one concentrates on the invocation of the deity, and as one breathes in, one concentrates on the bestowal of accomplishments. So let's say we are meditating on Avalokiteshvara, so we ourselves are visualized as Avalokiteshvara, and the wisdom Avalokiteshvara is visualized in front of us. As we breathe out, we visualize the Mani Mantra or Mipham emanating out of us, exiting us, and that mantra then invokes the wisdom deity in front, and then as we breathe in, we breathe the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum back into us, and as the mantra comes back into us, enters us, then we are filled with the blessings of the deity. As it says, the accomplishments are bestowed, the blessings and accomplishments are bestowed. So in this way we practice recitation, focusing on the inhale and exhale of the breath, the mantra traveling out of us towards the wisdom deity and then traveling back into us with all of the blessings and accomplishments of the deity. The 10 faults mentioned here are 10 faults that we should endeavor to avoid while reciting mantra. These include interrupting your mantra recitation with coughing, sneezing, and so on, interrupting your mantra recitation with ordinary speech and the like. By relying in this way on both inner concentration and outer requisites, the coming together of causes and conditions, unimpaired samaya, and so on, one will gain the common accomplishments and the supreme accomplishment, the level of Vajradhara of the four families. So by relying on this practice of inner concentration, meditation, together with the outer requisites of these specific types of conduct, as explained, the coming together of causes and conditions, so that all the various factors just mentioned, together with unimpaired samaya, and so on. Then, as a result, one will gain the common accomplishments, so the common cities which are enjoying, for instance, long life, prosperity, good luck, wealth, and so on. And also common attainments or powers like the power of sight, the power of superior sight, and the power of speed walking, and so on. One will also attain the supreme accomplishment. In the context of mantra, the supreme accomplishment refers to the four Vidyadhara levels: the matured Vidyadhara, Vidyadhara with power over life, Mahamudra Vidyadhara, and spontaneously accomplished Vidyadhara. In this way, one will attain the level of Vajradhara of the four families as a result. So actually, just to correct myself, the text here reads the level of Vajradhara of the four families. So I explain this as the four Vidyadhara levels, but that's not quite what is meant here. The level of Vajradhara of the four families means Vajradhara of the four Buddha families of, we could say, enlightened body, speech, mind, and the Buddha family, or the essence kaya. In any case, the level of Vajradhara of the four Buddha families. So now we move on to the presentation of Yoga Tantra. So we have Kriya, Upa or Ubaya, and then Yoga Tantra. So now the presentation of Yoga Tantra, which is comprised of a brief introduction and then a detailed explanation. So first, the brief introduction. The view of those who have engaged in the vehicle of Yoga Tantra, in which one draws closer to the meaning of the ultimate reality, has two aspects. The outer yoga, which is for those who, on the relative level, do not see themselves and the Buddha as equals, and who do not undertake the yogic discipline of the conduct in which everything is equal. This is the vehicle of tantric austerity. It's so called because, being unable to practice the samayas of nothing to keep, its practitioners must never part from the common vows, or because, from meditating on the three doors as the three secrets, they will never be influenced by adverse factors. The counterpart of this is the inner yoga, the tantric vehicle of skill in the methods for transforming all that appears into great bliss. So here, in this brief introduction, we have an explanation of the difference between the outer yogas or outer tantras and the inner tantras. So the outer yoga or outer tantras are the practice for the approach for those who relatively cannot see themselves, do not see themselves and the Buddha as equal. They regard themselves as inferior and the Buddhas as superior. They cannot yet recognize themselves to be equal to the Buddhas. They do not undertake the yogic discipline of the conduct in which everything is equal. Rather, they engage in a conduct that involves accepting and rejecting, or that is based on accepting and rejecting, a conduct that follows notions of clean and unclean, pure and impure, and so on. They conduct themselves accordingly. This approach is the approach of tantric austerity, the vehicle of tantric austerity, which is a synonym for the outer tantras. It is so called because, being unable to practice the samayas of nothing to keep. So the samayas of nothing to keep, this is one type of samaya of the inner tantras. This is explained in great detail together with all the many other enumerations of samaya in the Guhyagarbha Tantra and other inner tantras. So, being unable to practice such a samaya, such a inner tantric level of practice, these practitioners must never part from the common vows. Or we could say that it is called a vehicle of tantric austerity, because from meditating on the three doors as the three secrets, they will never be influenced by adverse factors. So this is an explanation of the outer tantras, which are also called the vehicle of tantric austerity. The counterpart of this is the inner yoga, or the inner tantras, the tantric vehicle of skill in the methods for transforming all that appears and exists into great bliss. And when we say great bliss here, we're not talking about ordinary sensations of bliss, conceptual sensations of bliss that we experience in our our ordinary lives, like the pleasure of wearing soft, luxurious clothes or eating delicious food, of pleasant physical sensations. We're not talking about that kind of conceptual bliss, but rather great bliss or exaltation, which is the unity of bliss and emptiness. There's a lot we could say about that. In short, this passage is distinguishing between the outer tantras and the inner tantras. The view of those engaged in the vehicle of the outer yoga tantra of austerities is held to be follows. And just to clarify the translation from my side. So in the previous section, a distinction was made between outer yoga and inner yoga. So the distinction, so we have yoga tantra, and then a distinction is being made between outer yoga tantra and inner yoga tantra, right? So the view of those engaged in the vehicle of the outer yoga tantra of austerities is held to be as follows. Rather than attaching prime importance to outer requisites as in Kriya Yoga, these practitioners emphasize the inner yoga, meditating on the male and female deities whose nature on the ultimate level is beyond arising and cessation, and who arise as the appearance aspect. So this is how the practices of outer yoga tantra train. They emphasize inner yoga. They do not emphasize the outer aspects of conduct and so on, like the Kriya practitioners. Rather, they emphasize inner yoga, inner practice, and the way they do this is by meditating on the deities, male and female, understanding that the nature of those deities ultimately is beyond arising and ceasing. So, beyond arising and ceasing is basically referring to emptiness, profound emptiness, beyond all elaborations, beyond all conceptual constructs. In the root stanzas of the middle way, Nagarjuna pays homage to Buddha by saying, you are the one who teaches freedom, the state that transcends all 8 conceptual extremes, the extremes of arising and cessation, going and coming, and so on and so forth, these 8 extremes. In short, we're talking here about this natural state of emptiness beyond all elaboration. So ultimately, the male and female deities are the nature of emptiness beyond elaboration, and yet in terms of their appearance aspect, emptiness arises, emptiness manifests in the form of the deity. So through the power of Vajrayana empowerment and skillful means, then it is recognized that emptiness arises, the appearance aspect of emptiness manifests in the form of the deity. With the concentration of a perfectly pure mind in which the meditation accords with that view, they meditate on the form body of the sublime deity. So it says here, in which the meditation accords with that view, so recognizing that ultimately all is beyond elaboration, and that ultimate elaboration-free state arises in the form of the deity. That itself is the view, and maintaining the recognition of that view is the meditation. Meditation and the view are not two separate things. One ascertains the view, and then to maintain or sustain that view is the meditation. So they're not two separate things. I'll just say that again. So to sustain the recognition of the view, that itself is the meditation. The other day someone asked me, well, what is the point, what's the benefit of doing all of this study? Well, there is enormous benefit to engaging in study. In Taiwan, so many people, so many of you have received many teachings and have a lot of understanding and knowledge. And that is incredibly important. It's important to study, it's important to develop understanding. Because without understanding, without knowledge, then how can you possibly know how to meditate, right? So these lines of text we just went through illustrate this principle perfectly. If you don't have an understanding of the way things are, then what are you going to meditate on? How will you know how to meditate? And how will you know what to meditate on, right? Because meditation is to sustain one's recognition of the view. And without engaging in study and developing understanding, how can you recognize that view? So, as it says here, with the concentration of a perfectly pure mind in which the meditation accords with that view, they meditate on the form body of the sublime deity. So, anyway, to reiterate, there is enormous benefit in studying. Studying is so important, because if you don't study, you will not know how to practice. It's as simple as that. These days, so many people, they study a lot, they develop an understanding, but they don't apply that understanding, right? The point of developing understanding is to apply it, to train in it. But then if people fail to apply their understanding, then the Dharma becomes something external to them. They don't apply it to their minds, the Dharma has no effect on them, and they end up completely untamed and unmoved by the Dharma. Well, that of course is no good. That's not an effective way to go about things. That would be like falling sick and then getting a lot of medicine and just piling it up all around you, but not taking a single pill. Of course, you're not going to recover if you don't take any of the medicine, right? But at the same time, if you don't have any medicine at all, there's simply no possibility for you to recover, right? So you need the medicine, but you don't just need to have the medicine, you also need to take the medicine, right? And then you can recover. So it's like that. You need to study, you need to develop understanding, but just having understanding is not enough. You need to then apply that understanding. That's the whole point. Apply the understanding through practice, through meditation, and apply yourself hour after hour, week and month after week and month, year after year, in sincere, focused practice. What is this practice? It is training, familiarizing yourself with the understanding that everything that appears and exists is great purity and quality. Everything is boundless purity. Everything is profound emptiness, and the natural radiance of emptiness manifests in the form of the deities. So if you develop that understanding and then apply yourself to training, meaning familiarizing yourself with that understanding accordingly, then eventually you'll reach the point where that understanding actually becomes your lived experience, your reality, and you will directly realize that. So moving on, this refers to the deity that is visualized by the Samaya holder who is meditating on the causally compatible deity, associated with both the ultimate deity and the specifically perceived deity, that is, the ultimate deity and the deity of the relative appearance aspect. So there are two types of deity, the ultimate deity and the deity of the relative appearance aspect. So, although we could say the ultimate deity and the specifically perceived deity. The ultimate deity refers to the natural state, reality as it is, the true nature of mind. This is the ultimate deity. And the deity of the relative appearance aspect is the deity that you train in, that we generate with our minds and familiarize ourselves with. So an ultimate deity and a relative deity, these two in the Guyagaba Tantra and the associated literature are called the ultimate deity of Dharmata and the relative symbolic deity. So to backtrack, this refers to the deity that's visualized by the Samaya holder who is meditating on the causally compatible deity. So the causally compatible deity, which is associated with the ultimate deity, which is the true nature, dharmata, natural awareness, and the specifically perceived deity or the relative appearance, the deity of relative appearance. So this is to say that when we meditate on the deity, we're meditating on a deity, on the relative symbolic deity, a deity that we generate by means of mind, we generate mentally. And this generated deity, this relative deity, is in accord with the ultimate deity, right? It's associated with and in accord with, or we could say in line with the ultimate deity of Dharmata, the ultimate deity that is none other than natural awareness. The natural state, the ultimate deity, is inherent within us. It is already naturally present within us. But if we don't apply ourselves to meditation, then this ultimate and inherent deity will never manifest. Right? This is why we train in deity practice. What do we mean by meditate? The word meditate means to familiarize or habituate ourselves with things, to habituate ourselves with the ultimate nature, with the ultimate inherent deity. Through that habituation, then we can actualize what is already inherent within us, right? We can make manifest the deity that is already present within us. But if we don't meditate, then this innate, inherent deity will never become manifest. It's a bit like if you have some treasure deep within the earth, or maybe some gold ore and the like. that gold ore is there, that treasure is there. But if you don't dig it up, it's not going to become manifest, is it? It's not going to become apparent. It's not going to become visible and usable. When training in this, the concentration that makes manifest the way in which the true truths are the nature of the deity is generated by means of the five factors of awakening and the four great miracles, and is associated with the four seals, which are as follows. So in training in this way, the concentration that makes manifest or actualizes the way in which the true truths are the nature of the deity. So the true truths are the nature of the deity. The true truths here refers to the ultimate and the relative, so the ultimate inherent deity and the relative deity of the appearance aspect, or we could say the relative symbolic deity that which is visualized and generated by the Samaya holder. So when training in this way, first of all one should when training in this way, first of all one should come to understand how all appearance and existence is the nature of great purity and equality. How everything is boundless purity. And with that understanding, then one engages in practice, and one practices in this way a training in the deity, which is the relative deity that is in accord with the ultimate deity. And we do this, we generate this deity by means of the five factors of awakening and so on. These five factors of awakening, there's quite a lot we could say about them, but I'll just list them here. These are the five factors of awakening in the awakening through a seed syllable, awakening through the hand symbolic implement or insignia, awakening through radiating out and absorbing light rays, and awakening through the form of the deity. And sorry, I've missed the fifth, but those are four of the five. Then we have the four great miracles, the four great miracles of enlightened body, speech, mind, and then the supreme great miracle. And these are associated with the four great seals, which are explained as follows. The great seal of the body is the actual body of the deity and its causal seed syllable attributes, and so forth. So the actual body of the deity refers to the body's form. Its causal seed syllable refers to the hung or shri and so on, that is the seed syllable of that deity. So the seed syllable will differ depending on the deity, right? This also includes the mantras of the deities. Then we have the attributes. Attributes refers to the symbolic implements, the things they hold in their hand, like a vajra and bell. In the case of Vajrasattva, then a vajra and bell, and so on and so forth. So these are the great seal of the body. Then we have the Dharma seal of speech, Dharma mudra, which is the tongue, which is visualized as a five-pronged vajra, and so on. So in this instance, the Dharma seal of speech is said to be the tongue. There are many different ways of visualizing the deity, sometimes with focus on the heart center, sometimes the tongue, as we have here, sometimes in the head or above the head, or in the arms and legs, and so on. So there's many different ways of visualizing the deity. In the past, I thought, early on, the deity is just visualized by focusing on the heart center, or in the heart center. But that's not the case. There are so many different ways of visualizing the deity. Then we have the Samaya seal of the mind, which comprises concentrating and holding, of which concentrating refers to the aspects of the symbols, the five-pronged vajra and such like, of the realization of the five wisdoms, and holding refers to the vajra and bell. So before we explain this, just one more remark about the Dharma seal of speech, which is the tongue. Well, one example of this is the speech blessing we perform when practicing Truma Namo. So in that speech blessing, we visualize a syllable Ram transforming into an orb containing Manjushri on top of our tongue. So that's one example of visualizing the deity in the tongue. So now moving on to the Samaya seal of the mind. So here, concentrating refers to the aspects of the symbols such as the five-pronged vajra and so on, which symbolize the realization of the five wisdoms. So visualizing those symbols. And then holding refers to the vajra and bell, holding the practitioner holding the vajra and bell, or keeping the vajra and bell. From all of the different samaya substances that are taught in the Vajrayana, the supreme of all is said to be the Vajra and bell. This is said to be the most important samaya substances, because they contain They are said to contain all of the infinite mandalas of secret mantra. The Vajra and Bell, they contain all of the infinite mandalas of secret mantra, and there's a very elaborate explanation of we find many explanations of the meaning of the Vajra and Bell, including a very elaborate explanation in Jingmin Rinpoche's Gongdu Namshe. Then we have the action seal of the activities, Kama Mudra. This refers to the emanation of light rays from the crossed Vajra on the moon disk in the heart. So in the heart of the deity, you visualize a moon disk on top of which is a crossed Vajra, one Vajra crossed on top of the other. And from this, then light rays radiate out. As they radiate out, they invite the sublime beings, the noble beings, they make offerings to them and so on. And then when they also benefit beings. These light rays enact the 4 activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and subjugating with white, yellow, red, and blue light rays respectively. In this way, beings are benefited and so on, so that these and other activities are performed. With these 4 seals, the practitioner remains diligent in never deviating from the way of being of the Buddhist body, speech, mind, and activities. An alternative explanation is that they seal them together in a single essence. By training in this manner, putting the emphasis on the inner yoga, they attain the common and supreme accomplishments. With these 4 seals, the practitioners remain diligent in never deviating from the way of being of the Buddhist body, speech, and mind, and activities. Sorry, I read that already, but so to continue, an alternative explanation is that they seal them together in a single essence. By training in this manner, putting the emphasis on the inner yoga, they attain the common and supreme accomplishments. So this is the approach of those training in outer yoga tantra. So now we've completed this explanation, and we'll move on to the presentation of the inner yoga tantra, which is really the heart and soul of the text, the main part of the text. So now we move on to a presentation of the inner yoga tantra. This is comprised of a brief introduction and a detailed explanation. So we will begin with the brief introduction. So just to clarify where we have now covered the levels of outer tantra, kriya tantra, and ubaya tantra. And then we came to yoga tantra. And yoga tantra has been divided into 2, right? Outer yoga tantra and inner yoga tantra. So we have covered outer yoga tantra, and now we move on to inner yoga tantra. So inner yoga tantra refers to the unsurpassable tantras, anuttara yoga tantra in Sanskrit. We could say or more simply, we could just say the inner tantras. And these inner yoga tantra, or the inner tantras, are further divided into Maha, Anu, and Ati, these 3. So, as the commentary reads, the view of those engaged in the inner yoga tantra of skillful means has 3 aspects. Maha Yoga, the method of generation, which teaches principally skillful means, the generation of the deity. So Maha Yoga emphasizes the generation stage, the great purity of the relative. Then we have Anu Yoga, the method of perfection, which teaches predominantly wisdom, the perfection stage, or this is also commonly translated as the completion stage. And here the great equality of the ultimate is presented. And then we have Ati, the method of the great perfection, which teaches mainly the non-dual union of generation and perfection, or generation and completion, the non-dual natural union of great purity of the relative and the great equality of the ultimate. So now, the detailed explanation. The detailed explanation is divided into, first, a general explanation of these 3 methods, and secondly, a specific explanation of the avenues for applying these. So first, a general explanation of the 3 methods being the methods of Maha Yoga, Anu Yoga, and Ati. First of all, we begin with the method of generation, which is the method of Maha Yoga. In the 3 inner tantras, it is not the case that the deity is seen when it is generated and not seen when it is not generated, because both cases are similar in that everything is viewed as the spontaneously present mandala of the deity. There is no separation between cause and result. So in the 3 inner tantras of Maha, Anu, and Ati, then the level of understanding is quite different from the understanding and approach we find at the level of Kriya and Ubaya, the outer tantras. In the outer tantras, they understand that yes, the body is the nature of the deity, but only when one meditates on it as being the nature of the deity. They think when one is not meditating on the body as the deity, well then the body is not the deity. They have this kind of distinction. At the level of inner Tantra, though, it's understood that whether you recognize it or not, whether you meditate or not, whether you generate the deity or whether you don't, it makes no difference. Your body is the deity. Phenomena are divine. Whether recognized or not, whether generated, consciously generated or not, all phenomena are originally, primordially enlightened. They are the nature of Buddha, the nature of awakening. These 5 elements, for instance, earth, water, fire, wind, and space, they are originally, primordially, and so always, regardless of one's awareness or not, they are the nature of enlightenment. They are the 5 female Buddhas. That is their primordial nature. And this doesn't change depending on whether the practitioner recognizes this and generates the deity or not. So this is a feature of all 3 inner tantras, a feature that is not shared by the outer tantras. So you might then think, okay, well, if that's the case, if all things are primordially pure, regardless of whether we meditate or not, recognize or not, then does that mean that we don't need to meditate, that we don't need to do anything? Well, no, that is not what is meant. All things are primordially pure, but until we recognize that and until we train, familiarize ourselves with that, and actually make manifest what is already there, then this primordial enlightenment of all things is not going to, we could say, perform a function. It's not going to be of much use. How to understand that? Well, we could look at the example of a wish-fulfilling jewel or a wish-granting tree. So there is said, or at least in the past, there was said to be wish-fulfilling jewels, these incredibly priceless jewels that could fulfill every wish that was made before them. But that so the wish-fulfilling jewel has that power, but still, if you had a wish-fulfilling jewel, but you didn't recognize it for what it was, and you didn't treasure it, you didn't polish it and keep it in a clean place, you didn't make offerings to it, and then supplicate it for this and that, if you didn't ask it for certain things, well, then it wouldn't fulfill your wishes, right? It has the power to fulfill anything you ask it for. But if you don't recognize that it has this power and you don't then ask it for things, it's not going to fulfill your wishes, right? The same goes with a wish-granting tree. If you don't recognize that the tree is a wish-granting tree and then you don't then request things from it, well, then you're not going to have your wishes fulfilled, right? Or we could say the same thing about gold. You might have a solid lump of gold that's worth a huge amount of money. But if you don't recognize that that gold is gold and you think, oh, that's just a common stone, well, then the gold isn't going to be of any use to you, right? So there's so many stories to illustrate this principle. Really lovely stories and very long, detailed stories that I could tell, but we are just so restricted by time here. Just very briefly, though, one story. There was an old beggar lady in the past. She lived in poverty and she survived by begging for alms. So one day she was out begging for food, and there was someone with clairvoyance, with prescience or clairvoyance, and this person came over to her and said, "Hey, you beggar lady, you're not poor, you're rich." She said, "What do you mean? I'm not rich, I'm poor. Look at me. I survive just on the charity of others. Please don't be shouting out that I'm rich, or people will not give me, they won't donate anything to me." He said, No. Go back to your hut, and you will see that underneath your stove, in the ground beneath your stove, there lies a huge lump of gold, a lump that is as big as a sheep's head. That must be like 15-20 kilos of solid gold, right? That's a huge amount of gold. That gold is present in the ground underneath your stove, so therefore it's your property. You are not a beggar lady, you're not a poor lady, you are a very rich lady. When the lady then went back to her hut and she dug into the ground, she dug about a meter down, directly beneath her stove, and lo and behold, she found this enormous lump of gold. And in a single instance, she was transformed from a beggar lady into an incredibly rich woman. So it's like that. We have enlightenment within us. The state of Buddhahood is ever present within us. Buddhahood lies within. It's already present there within us. But until now, we fail to recognize that. And so we are, you say, impoverished in that sense. If we can recognize the Buddha that lies within, and then having recognized it, meditate in order to familiarize ourselves with this recognition, then the Buddha that is present within us can become manifest. It can be revealed and brought out into the light, so to speak. And then we will, then our natural enlightened state will become manifest. And that's it. No need then to search for enlightenment anywhere else, anywhere outside of ourselves. Mipham Rinpoche spoke about this and said, he explained that the stronger our certainty is in the truth of boundless purity, the deeper and stronger our certainty in the truth that all things are naturally pure and equal. All things are boundless purity. Our body is the nature of the deity, primordially so. All phenomena, all of the elements are originally enlightened, originally pure. The deeper and stronger our certainty in this fact is, to that extent, our progress will be swifter and more effective. Our accumulation of merit will be so much more swift and powerful. Our purification of obscurations will be so much more swift and powerful, and our progress towards enlightenment will be so much more swift and powerful. But failing to recognize the boundless purity of all things, then we remain impoverished, just like that beggar woman who continued to live in poverty for so long, not recognizing that a huge lump of gold was present in the ground beneath her. Nevertheless, the fact that one trains by means of concentration implies that the process is something that has to be trained in gradually. So just as we explained. For this, all phenomena are viewed as the enlightened state in the reflection-like mandala, which has three aspects: the natural Buddha, realizational Buddha, and accomplishment Buddha. So these three types of Buddha, natural, realizational, and accomplishment Buddha, these will be explained below, so I won't say anything about them here. The first refers to sentient beings, and here again there are the Buddha of the cause of birth, the Buddha of the support of birth, and the Buddha of the full manifestation of birth. So the first refers to sentient beings, us sentient beings who are wandering aimlessly in samsara. And the first of these types of Buddha, the natural Buddha of sentient beings, has three further Buddhas: the Buddha of the cause of birth, support of birth, and the full manifestation of birth. Of these, the Buddha of the cause of birth refers to the three causes that produce the physical body, so the sperm, ovum, and mind. So the sperm is the essence of the father, the ovum the essence of the mother, and mind, it refers to the consciousness of our previous life, which then enters the union of sperm and ovum. In that way, then our present life is conceived in the womb of the mother, right? There's a lot actually to say about this combination of sperm, ovum, and mind. Or we could say sperm, ovum, and prana, prana referring to mind, which then enters the sperm and ovum, so that one is conceived. The texts on Salong practice, the subtle channels and winds go into this in a lot of detail, but we won't say much more about it here. So in any case, the sperm, ovum, and mind are the Buddha of the cause of birth. Next, we have the Buddha of the support of birth, which refers to all of the physical and mental constituents of both father and mother. And just to backtrack to the sperm, ovum, and mind, these three are often described as an obscuration, a very subtle obscuration, the sperm, ovum, and mind. Anyway, moving on to the Buddha of the support of birth, this refers to the physical and mental constituents of the father and mother. So the sperm of the father, the ovum of the mother, and all of their other physical and mental constituents. Next, we have the Buddha of the full manifestation of birth, which is the stage of the full formation of one's body. These three are always naturally in the enlightened state. So once one has been conceived in the mother's womb, then the fetus starts to develop, right? It goes through various stages of formation, from a kind of a blob shape to an oval shape to a a longer shape, and so on and so forth. The various stages of fetal development are described in detail in the scriptures. After about 7 weeks, then the fetus takes on a shape vaguely resembling something of a body, a human body. And thereafter, every week, the fetus continues to develop until it is fully formed and ready to be given birth to. So these details, these things are explained in a lot of detail in Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities. We won't go into those details now. No need to go into those details, especially since so many in the audience are doctors themselves, so have a very detailed knowledge already of the various stages of fetal development. So this is the Buddha of the full manifestation of birth. These three Buddhas are always naturally in the enlightened state. So from the moment of conception in the mother's womb, then one is, a sentient being is naturally already in the enlightened state. It's not the case that the sentient being needs to transform themselves into Buddha, needs to accomplish Buddhahood anew. They are already enlightened. That is their natural present state. So, now let's move on to the second type, the realizational Buddha. This refers to beings who dwell on the Vidyadhara level. So the realizational Buddha describes those who have recognized their naturally enlightened state. They have recognized natural Buddhahood, and with that recognition, they have applied themselves to the practices of generation and perfection, the practices of generation stage and perfection or completion stage, the practice with and without reference points. And as a result, they have attained a degree of realization and have attained one of the 4 Vidyadhara levels. The Vidyadhara level of the matured Vidyadhara levels of matured Vidyadhara, and so on. These 4 that I mentioned earlier today. Now, the third, the accomplishment Buddha, this refers to those who actually behold the ultimate nature. So, the accomplishment Buddha, this is the third of the 3 Buddhas mentioned just above, right? The natural Buddha, realizational Buddha, and the accomplishment Buddha. So this third Buddha refers to those who actually behold the ultimate nature, who have made manifest, who have fully actualized and realized the ultimate nature. So first of all, one recognizes natural Buddha and trains in that, and thereby attains the Vidyadhara levels. The 4 Vidyadhara levels actually pertain to the path. They are levels of accomplishment on the path. And when the path is perfected, one attains perfect realization, or we could say actualization. And this is called the accomplishment Buddha, the consummate fruition of enlightenment. These are also distinguished as natural and situational. So, natural and situational. So above we had mention of the natural Buddha, right? How all beings are from the very beginning, from the outset, they are naturally enlightened. So that is what's meant by natural Buddha, or naturally enlightened. And situational refers to the various changing stages of development that sentient beings go through, right? So the stages of fetal development and so on and so forth. Thus, these are also distinguished as natural and situational, these 3 types of Buddha. Therefore, although there are no non-enlightened phenomena to be seen, this has not been understood and needs to be realized. So, as just explained, there is not a single phenomena that is not already enlightened. There is nothing non-enlightened. The 5 elements of earth, water, fire, wind, and space, the 5 aggregates, elements, constituents, and so on. Not a single one of them is not already enlightened. That is the case, that is how it is, but this fact has not been understood. This hasn't been recognized, and it needs to be recognized, it needs to be realized. Just the fact that everything is already enlightened, we could say that itself is not enough. It's not enough if we fail to recognize that everything is already enlightened, right? Failing to recognize the naturally enlightened state of everything, we remain impoverished, like that beggar woman who failed to realize for so long that there was great treasure right beneath her feet. This is why this needs to be recognized, and having been recognized, it needs to be trained in. It needs to be meditated upon or familiarized with. These are all synonyms for the same Tibetan word. So as the text says, one is not familiar with it and must become so. So first of all, one has not understood that everything is enlightened, and this needs to be understood. Secondly, one is not familiar with this, and so one must become familiar with this by training through meditation. As I said before, when it comes to meditating on the deity, it's not enough just to meditate on the deity without an understanding or recognition that all phenomena are naturally the nature of the deity. To meditate on the deity without understanding that will be of absolutely no use. It will not serve any purpose. When we meditate on the deity, it must be done with an understanding that everything is in and of itself the nature of the deity. Then the practice will be effective. For this reason, it's held, one trains the mind in the 3 Buddha levels. So, to reiterate, we need to understand this, right? But having understood this, we then need to apply ourselves to practice. Just understanding but not applying ourselves to practice won't be of much benefit. That said, actually, Mipham Rinpoche does say that even just understanding without really engaging in practice, even just developing an understanding does have enormous benefit. How so? So if you engage in a lot of study, right? Study of the scriptures, and through that you develop a good understanding of the natural purity and equality of everything that appears and exists, the boundless purity of all things. Well, by becoming familiar with that, understanding that, then one will naturally purify one's obscurations more swiftly, one will naturally accumulate merit. One will gradually come to perceive things as divine. So one's perception will change, become more pure. And at some point, if one really gains conviction in the view, let's say perhaps an intellectual conviction in the view, then one's perception will be transformed by that, and kind of naturally and vividly, appearances will reveal themselves to be great purity, great equality. This, Mipham Rinpoche says, will be the outcome of very thorough and successful analysis and investigation into the view. It will become very kind of natural for one to perceive things as boundless purity. So Mipham Rinpoche taught this to be the case, and presumably that is the case, yes. And yeah, if I think about it, if we think about it, that certainly makes sense, right? That someone, if one develops a good conceptual understanding of the view of boundless purity, that it will help one to recognize. Just that intellectual understanding will help one to recognize that, okay, the elements and so on and so forth, everything one sees is enlightened. One will understand how that is the case, right? The other day someone said to me, so Rinpoche, when practicing Tantra, one has to think, whatever one encounters, one has to think it's the Buddha. So like when the wind blows and you feel the wind on your face, you have to think, oh, this wind is the Buddha. When you drink water or you feel water, you have to think, oh, this is the Buddha. When you feel something hot, maybe something burning like fire, then you have to think, this is the Buddha. That's how you have to think, how you have to perceive things. But how and why? How is it the Buddha? Well, indeed, this is the question, right? How are phenomena the Buddha? How is it that all things are enlightened? Well, we will only come to understand that by studying texts like this, a Garland of views, right? It's texts like this that explains to us actually how and why all phenomena are enlightened. If we have no understanding of how and why all phenomena are enlightened, and we just kind of tell ourselves that, okay, everything is enlightened, everything is the Buddha, the earth, water, sky, wind, and so on, all of these things are Buddha, but we have no understanding why. We just kind of tell ourselves that is the case. We just tell ourselves that that's the case. We're not logically convinced. We don't know the reasoning. the hows and whys, but we just tell ourselves, okay, that's how it is, and we try and meditate like that. Well, that will not be a meaningful kind of meditation, a fruitful kind of meditation. That's just like taking a lump of iron and just telling yourself, this is gold, this is gold. Iron is not gold, right? And just telling yourself that it is not going to change the fact that iron is iron. So when training in deity meditation and when training on such a path, then one needs to do so with an understanding, right? An understanding of how all things are pure, how all things are enlightened. And it's these sorts of texts that give us that understanding. The understanding that we gain from studying such scriptures is like a foundation. If we're building a house, then first of all we build a foundation, right? A deep and stable foundation made from rocks and stones and so on, right? And once the foundation is laid, only then do we start building the walls, right? The walls and the various stories, and then finally the roof, and then the tiles on the roof and so on, and then the top ornament to finish off the house, right? The basis and support for all of those things is the foundation. So likewise when it comes to practice. First, the basis of it all is the view, the understanding of how and why all phenomena are enlightened, how and why all things are pure. So for this reason, it's held one trains the mind in the 3 Buddha levels, or the 3 bhumis. On the vehicle of characteristics, there are 11 bhumis, or 11 Buddha levels, as it's translated here. But on the tantric path, there are 13 bhumis. So what are these extra 3 bhumis? The bhumi of the level of universal light, the level of lotus endowed, and the level of the great wheel of collection of letters. So in order to train the mind to the level of universal light, one meditates on the non-conceptual concentration of thusness, the samadhi of suchness. That's an alternate translation for the same thing, the concentration of thusness or the samadhi of suchness. Then to train to the next level of the lotus endowed, then one meditates on the all-illuminating concentration, combining wisdom and compassion. And to train to the next level of the great wheel of collection of letters, one meditates on the concentration of the cause, the seed syllable. So these are the three samadhis or 3 concentrations. The non-conceptual concentration of thusness, the all-illuminating concentration, and the causal concentration of the seed syllable, which lead to the attainment of these 3 levels. These 3 samadhis, or 3 concentrations, are, you could say, a framework or crucial aspect of all practices in the unsurpassable or inner yoga tantras. So to go over these once more, in order to train the mind or to attain the level of universal light, one meditates on the non-conceptual concentration of thusness. So this concentration of thusness that is training in the non-conceptual state. Then to train to the level or to attain the level of the lotus endowed, one meditates on the all-illuminating concentration. This all-illuminating concentration is the nature of compassion. As it says here, it combines wisdom and compassion. Then, to train to or attain the level of the great wheel of collections of letters, one meditates on the concentration of the cause, or the causal samadhi, which is to meditate on the seed syllable, hung or om, and so on, depending on the specific practice and deity. So these are the 3 concentrations, and one trains in these, one develops these in stages. When one gets used to them, well habituated to them, one proceeds to construct the mandala of the support and the supported step by step. So the support refers to the pure realm and celestial palace. The supported refers to the deities present in that pure realm and celestial palace. One generates these step by step, and by meditating in this way, accomplishment is attained. So to go back to these 3 samadhis, go back to these 3 extra bhumis that we have mentioned here: universal light, lotus endowed, great wheel of collection of letters. About this, my root guru Khenpo Daze Rinpoche, he explained that there's really not a significant difference between the bhumis traversed and attained through the vehicle of characteristics and those attained through the vehicle of secret mantra. He said once you've attained the 11th bhumi of universal light, then regardless of which vehicle you traveled there on, you've attained the state of perfect enlightenment. And Khenpo Daza Rinpoche explained that these extra bhumis, these extra 3 bhumis that it explained in a secret mantra context, are more like specific aspects of that same state, specific aspects of the state of enlightenment. They're not different. They're not different levels of accomplishment. They're not levels of accomplishment that are somehow different to the level of accomplishment attained through the vehicle of characteristics. Rather, they're descriptions of certain aspects of that level of accomplishment, that state of enlightenment. In other contexts and scriptures, then we find a enumeration of 15 bhumis or 16 bhumis and so on and so forth. To look into the meaning of those, well, you'd need to then look at those specific scriptures. In any case, whether we say there is a significant difference between the 11 and 13 bhumis and so on and so forth, it's by training in the 3 samadhis in this way that one attains them. And then by proceeding from within the framework of the 3 samadhis to construct the mandala of support and supported. By training in this way, step by step, accomplishment or enlightenment is attained. Now the method of perfection. So I'm going to move very quickly through this section and not give too much commentary. The reason being that the method of perfection refers to Anuyoga and Mahayoga, which we just discussed, and Anuyoga are very similar. I will give more commentary and explanation when we come to Hatha Yoga. So the method of perfection, Anuyoga, is as follows. All the points that have to be meditated and practiced, as proclaimed in the Yoga Tantra source text, are taught from the point of view of one's ability to meditate on everything as clear and complete in the same instant of awareness, whose nature is bodhicitta. They are visualized as one without moving from the two. While they are inseparably one, they are in 3 respects distinct and unmuddled, appearing like the stars and planets reflected in the ocean, or like the simultaneous display of the 4 modes of contact by someone with miraculous powers. So someone with miraculous powers, like Buddha Shakyamuni, our perfect teacher, can display all 4 modes of contact, sitting, staying still, moving around, sleeping and eating, all at the same time. And we see instances of this in the accounts of Buddha's life. There were times when simultaneously different people saw Buddha out collecting alms, while others simultaneously at the same time saw him in another place eating, while others at the same time saw him somewhere lying down, and so on. So they saw Buddha in different places doing different things at the very same time. On the ultimate level, there are what are called the 2 immovabilities. The first is that one does not move from the enlightened knowledge that the whole of phenomenal existence is the nature of the male and female deities in the mandala, which is the reflection of the spontaneously present nature, devoid of arising and cessation. So all things are beyond arising and cessation. The second is that one also does not move from the expansive truth, the middle way, whose meaning is freedom from every kind of conceptual extreme. And without moving from these, one meditates on the relative level with an enhanced concentration, visualizing all the aggregates, elements, and senses and fields as the form body of the sublime deity of the mandala. This is what we call the single visualization. Whatever arises, whatever one meditates on, everything is the same in ultimate reality, bodhicitta, the expanse devoid of arising and cessation, and is therefore described as inseparably one. So we had mention of this in the opening paragraph, right? The fact that while they are inseparably one, they are in 3 respects distinct and unmuddled. So as for the 3 ways in which the meditation is distinct and unmuddled, well, first everything is meditated upon as the spontaneously present mandala without any muddling with any other concentrations. Secondly, the visualization of the colors, attributes, and so on in the mandala of enhanced concentration is unmuddled and distinct. And third, the form of the main deity in the mandala is not mixed up with the other deities. All this is visualized in the same instant of awareness, whose nature is bodhicitta. So these are these three ways in which the meditation is distinct and unmuddled. By meditating in this way, according to this particular approach of Anuyoga, then accomplishment or enlightenment is attained. If one is able to apply this spontaneously and without effort, and one is able to apply it equally in terms of directions and time, it is no different from the great perfection. Here, however, the practice is associated with effort. So, if one's able to apply this and apply this spontaneously and without effort, then it's no different from the great perfection. So the practice of the great perfection is without effort, beyond effort. It involves no exertion, no intentional effort whatsoever. It's a spontaneous, effortless approach. Here, however, the practice of Anuyoga is associated with effort. So it's not vastly different from the practice of the great perfection, but it's different in the sense that still some degree of effort and exertion is involved, is necessary. So one of the unique features of the great perfection is that the practice is spontaneous and effortless. Purity manifests, pure appearances manifest effortlessly, simply by resting naturally and freely within natural awareness, within the state of the great perfection. No effort whatsoever is involved. But at the level of Anuyoga, still some effort is necessary. So as it says, the practice is associated with effort at this level. Awareness is associated with direction, instants are associated with time, and it is in this sense that all points are completely and instantaneously applied. And this is why Anuyoga, it's for this reason that Anuyoga is regarded as a slightly lower or lesser path, lesser vehicle than the great perfection. So the practice is still associated with effort, awareness is associated with direction, instants are associated with time, and so on. So at this level of Anuyoga, then some degree of effort is still necessary, and it's with effort that one rests in natural awareness, and that from within natural awareness all deities and pure appearances are manifested, generated simultaneously and instantaneously within a single second. So this is done, but with effort. In the sections on the generation phase and the perfection phase, apart from the methods for practicing the path, Padmasambhava did not mention any differences in the general view and the result. So in the sections on the generation phase, meaning the explanation of Mahayoga, which is the practice of the generation phase, and this current explanation of Anuyoga, which is the perfection phase or completion phase, apart from the different methods for practicing those paths, so at the level of Mahayoga, one practices using the framework of the three samadhis. And in the level of Mahayoga, one trains in generation phase by means of the three samadhis. And here in Anuyoga, one trains in the perfection phase, meditating on everything as inseparably one, and yet distinct and unmuddled in three respects, as we've just described. However, aside from these differences in methods for practicing on the path, Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, did not mention any differences in the general view or the result. So the general view of Maha and Anuyoga, or the results that stem from the practices of Mahayoga and Anuyoga. And just a note on the translation. So the seems there are two slight differences in different editions of the text. So one edition would read, as our translation does, the general view and the result, and another, seems the text Rinpoche is using, reads the general deity and the result. So in general, there are no differences between the deities and the result. The reason for this is that they are, as he had already explained, in ultimate truth, which is to say that in ultimate truth there is no arising or cessation. Ultimately, all phenomena are beyond arising or cessation, beyond elaboration, and in relative truth everything is viewed as the illusory, perfectly pure mandala of the deity. So what this is saying is that ultimately all things are great equality, and relatively all things are great purity. These two truths are viewed as inseparable, and the result, unsurpassable enlightenment, is no different from that for the whole of the great vehicle. So meaning the result, unsurpassable enlightenment, is no different from the result of the whole of the great vehicle. He therefore considered there was no need to specify them again here. So the great equality of the ultimate truth, the great purity of the relative truth, and the inseparability of these two truths, the inseparability of great purity and equality, these three things all pertain to the view, right? And the result that stems from that view and practice is none other than unsurpassable enlightenment, enlightenment that is no different from that of the whole great vehicle. And he therefore considered that there was no need to specify them again here. So with this we've completed the presentation of Anuyoga, and we now come to Atta Yoga, the great perfection. So now we come to the method of the great perfection. The great perfection comprises the meaning of view and the method. Of these two, the meaning, or meaning of the view, is that all phenomena are shown as being the nature of enlightenment, self-arisen gnosis. All phenomena, all possible things, the external environment comprised of the elements, earth, water, fire, wind, and space, all external things, all internal phenomena, one's five aggregates, one's elements, constituents, and so on, all of these things, in short, everything that exists from the peak of samsara all the way down to the very depths of hell, the whole of samsara and every single being within it, are the nature of enlightenment. All sentient beings are endowed with Buddha nature, that is their nature, self-arisen gnosis, primordial wisdom. There is not a single being, a single phenomena that is not enlightened. As the Tantras state, all things, all phenomena are samantabhadra. Everything is enlightened. And the method is the means and avenue for its application. So, how to actually engage in this way of the great perfection? Well, that is what the means and avenue are. The following passage is intended as a brief introduction to these two, the view and method. So, first of all, a brief summary, a brief introduction. All the numerous distinctions as this or that of mundane and supramundane phenomena, relative and ultimate, general and particular characteristics, white and black, and so on, are inseparable. Inseparable as the nature of the mandala of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So all numerous distinctions of this or that, of mundane and supramundane phenomena. So mundane refers to everything contained within deluded mind, deluded perception. Supramundane phenomena is that which is undeluded or which transcends delusion. The relative, we can say, are deluded appearances. Ultimate is the true nature of things. We can understand relative and ultimate like that. Then we have general and particular characteristics. Well, the general characteristics are the phenomena that appear, things that appear, the images of things that appear to the minds of beings, and particular characteristics are the ability of things to perform their respective function. And white and black and all other colors like yellow and so on and so forth, these and all other numerous distinctions are inseparable, they are indistinguishable. Inseparable, indistinguishable in the sense that we cannot say, oh, this is superior and this is inferior, this is greater, this is lesser. These distinctions cannot be made, they do not hold. Inseparable as what? Well, inseparable as the nature of the mandala of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So this means that all form, everything, all visual form that appears, the external environment of mountains and plains and meadows and buildings with pillars and so on and so forth, all of these things are the mandala of enlightened body, of Buddha's body. All sounds, all speech, so not just human speech, but all animal speech, bird song, the sound of insects and other animals, and not just that, but all sounds, so the sound of fire, of water, of wind, every sound and utterance is the mandala of enlightened speech. And as for mind, well, every concept, thought, perception, every mentation, every mental movement, all of these are the mandala of enlightened mind. The great master Terdat Lingpa said, as his final words, May appearance, sound, and awareness in the state of deity, mantra, and dhammakaya merge boundlessly as the display of kayas and wisdoms in the profound and secret practice of the great yoga, and may they be of one taste, indivisible with the tikle of the wisdom mind. These were the final words or testament of Tetat Lingpa. So may all appearances reveal themselves as the deity, all sounds as the utterance of mantra, and all thoughts as the display of Dhammakaya. So this is an incredibly high, lofty statement, incredibly high level of teaching, we can say. It's saying that there is nothing in the world, not a single thing that appears and exists, not a single phenomena that is not enlightened, that is not Buddha. An analogy can be made with the characteristics of the person and the characteristics of conventional phenomena, propounded by ordinary worldly people and the non-Buddhist extremists, which are, all of them, included and described in the Buddhist teachings. So the characteristics of the person and conventional phenomena propounded by ordinary worldly people. So you're just your average Joe, your average person who is interested in nothing more than the things of this life, succeeding through business and politics and social networking and making money and so on and so forth. Completely ordinary Joe with an ordinary approach to life. And then the non-Buddhist extremists, which we discussed previously, the various non-Buddhists who hold either eternalistic extreme views or nihilistic extreme views, the unreflective, and so on and so forth. All of them are included and described in the Buddhist teachings. And all of them, together with everything that possibly exists, possibly appears, are inseparable. Inseparable as enlightened body, speech, and mind, deity, mantra, and wisdom. This is an incredibly, almost unthinkably, inconceivably high and extraordinary statement. In what way are they all inseparable? How is it that they are all inseparable as enlightened body, speech, and mind? Well, they are inseparable by their nature from the very beginning. Having realized this, one then trains in this understanding. Well, as it says, they are inseparable by their very nature from the very beginning, originally so. And it is by having realized this, by understanding this, that one then trains in this understanding. So, first of all, one comes to understand this, the way, the how and why of all things inseparability, and then with that understanding one trains in it. So one does not train in just thinking blindly, this dog is a lion, this stone is a piece of gold. That would not be the view, that would not be correct meditation, just imagining something to be what it is not. That is not how we train. We train in recognizing things for what they are. We recognize the reality of things, and then we train by familiarizing ourselves with that recognition. After this brief introduction, there is an explanation from the Guyagaba Tantra, which uses the term Vajra to indicate the adamantine nature of the enlightened body, speech, and mind. So here Mipham Rinpoche is giving a source, scriptural source for his teachings. We talk about scripture and reasoning, or we could say scripture and logic. So these teachings are rooted in scripture and logic. The scripture referenced here is the Guyagaba Tantra, which is the words of Buddha Vajradhara himself, the very words of Vajradhara. This is the direct speech of Buddha Vajradhara, the Guyagaba Tantra. We have the 18 tantras, the 18 great tantras that we spoke about at the beginning of these teachings, and we spoke about how the Guyagaba Tantra is the king of them all. And this tantra does not just contain authoritative statements, but it also contains many types of logic, many lines of reasoning. If we were to go into those reasonings, we'd probably need to stick around for another 7 days. But many incredible reasonings are contained in the Guyagaba Tantra. As it is said in the Tantra, the Vajra aggregates are known as the 5 perfect Buddhas. All the many senses and fields are the mandala of bodhisattvas. Earth is Lokana, water Mamaki, fire is Pandaravasini, wind is Tara, and space Dadvishvari. The 3 worlds appear from the beginning. So this quotation from the Tantra begins, actually in the root Tantra itself, it begins with Ema. an exclamation of wonder. The Vajra aggregates. The aggregates can also refer to our aggregate of form, feeling, perception, and so on, right? Formation and consciousness, those aggregates. But those are conditioned worldly aggregates, right? Here we're not talking about those aggregates, but rather Vajra aggregates. So what does this word Vajra connote? This word Vajra is so loaded with meaning. It has so many layers of meaning. So in short, the word Vajra means non-dual primordial wisdom. Vajra means self-arisen wisdom, self-arisen jnana. It also means Sugatagarbha, Buddha nature, and it has 7 qualities. In texts like Dujum Lingpa's Buddhahood Without Meditation, or Nangjang, and Longchenpa's Treasury of the Supreme Vehicle, amongst other texts, we find an explanation of the 7 qualities of Vajra. These are uncuttable, indestructible, true, solid, stable, unattached, and undefeatable. These 7 Vajra qualities. If we were to go through each of those 7 and explain what each of those 7 qualities actually means, then, well, we would spend all of our time just discussing that. When it says here Vajra aggregates, then it indicates that we're talking about the pure aggregates, the Vajra aggregates. So the Vajra aggregates, meaning the pure aggregates, are, well, the pure form aggregate is Buddha Vairocana, the pure sensation aggregate is Buddha Vajrasattva, and likewise with the remaining 3 aggregates of formation, perception, and consciousness, these 5 aggregates are the 5 sovereigns of the 5 Buddha families, the 5 male Buddhas. So as the Tantras state, the 5 aggregates are the 5 perfect Buddhas. Likewise with the 5 elements, sense fields, and so on, all phenomena are enlightened. And their correspondence, well, I don't need to mention that here because it will be explained below, one by one. The meaning of this quotation, as interpreted by the Master, is as follows. So the Master here refers to Master, the Lotus Master, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. So here, the Lotus Master, Guru Rinpoche, has brought into his text the intent of the Guyagaba Tantra, and is explaining things along those lines. Or better we say, explaining by means of the intent of the Guyagaba Tantra. How so? Well, as the text explains, all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana are the nature of awareness, bodhicitta, and so they are unborn since the beginning. Everything in samsara, everything in nirvana, is equally the nature of awareness, of bodhicitta. We could say mind meaning the ultimate nature of mind, natural awareness, bodhicitta. So whether it's not the case that samsara is something negative, something lesser, and nirvana is something excellent, something better, that is not the case. Samsara and nirvana are both equally the nature of awareness. Whether both samsara and nirvana are the creative power or the display of awareness, they are none other than that. So whether this creative display of awareness manifests as samsara, as the suffering and anguish of samsara, well, it is still nothing other than awareness. And if it manifests as nirvana, as the enlightened phenomena, the mandala of deities and so on, well, it's still nothing other than awareness. Whether the creative display of awareness arises, regardless of how the creative display manifests, it is none other than the creative display. It's none other than awareness. There's a wonderful story, quite a long story, that illustrates this very well, but unfortunately we don't have time to tell that story. So, all things of samsara and nirvana are the nature of awareness, of bodhicitta, and so, therefore, they are unborn since the beginning. They are originally unborn. So, when we speak of awareness, bodhicitta, is this awareness, bodhicitta, something truly established, something substantial or concrete? No, it is not. It lacks reality. It is unborn. So this awareness, bodhicitta, is not, it's also not a dualistic mind. It is not subject and object, apprehender and apprehended. Dualistic perception, that is conceptual mind, right? Sem in Tibetan. freedom from such dualistic perception is primordial wisdom, jnana. And this primordial wisdom, this bodhicitta, is unborn since the beginning. It is primordially unarisen. Yet, while abiding as the great unborn emptiness, so all things are unborn, awareness itself is unborn, and yet while abiding as, or while remaining emptiness, great unborn emptiness, things appear. Things appear, and these appearing aspects arise unceasingly. So awareness, bodhicitta, is great unborn emptiness, and while remaining emptiness, nevertheless, the creative power or display of awareness manifests. It manifests in all manner of ways, unceasingly, we could say unobstructedly. So it can manifest as samsara, it can also manifest as the appearance of nirvana. So it can manifest as the appearance of samsara, it can manifest as the impure appearance of samsara. It can also manifest as the pure appearance of nirvana. From the perspective of nirvana, from the perspective of awareness, there is no difference whatsoever, no qualitative distinction, no better or worse, no distinction whatsoever. In the essence of awareness, the true nature of awareness, there is absolutely no difference between the display of samsara and the display of nirvana. From the perspective or the essence of let's say it like this, from within awareness itself, there is no difference whatsoever between all of these various displays. They are all equally awareness's creative display, and there is no qualitative distinction whatsoever between them. It is us confused beings who misinterpret this display. We regard the impure, we see the display of samsara regarded as impure and lesser, and in comparison, we label the display of nirvana as pure and better, and then therefore we make these distinctions, we make these judgments, and so we fall into confusion regarding the creative display, this unceasing creative display of awareness. We can use an example to illustrate this. So when the sun shines, there are some flowers like lotuses that bloom in the sunlight, right? The sun shines and those flowers open. There are other flowers like the kuma flower who actually close up when the sun shines. So when the sun shines in the morning, certain flowers like lotuses open up, and others like the kuma flower, they close up. Well, the sun has no distinctions, right? And the sun has no intention. The sun has no thought, oh, I will shine and therefore make the lotus open and the kuma close. The sun is just shining without any concept, any intention or distinction. And nevertheless, these different flowers respond in different ways. And so it's like that. Awareness is just awareness. Awareness is just awareness. Its display is just its display. Someone who has realized this to be the case, well, they recognize a reality for what it is, and so they attain liberation. They're liberated within awareness. But then sentient beings who lack such recognition, who lack awareness of reality, they fail to understand this, and so for them they experience the display, the appearance of impure samsaric phenomena, ranging from the higher samsaric heavenly realms, all the way down to the impure lower realms of hungry ghost, hell being, animal, and so on. And then impure phenomena like business and all of the dissatisfactory business of the world, suffering and discontent. All of that manifests for us sentient beings because of our failure to recognize awareness for what it is. So just as it says here, yet while abiding as the great unborn emptiness, they appear, samsara and nirvana appear, and these appearing aspects arise unceasingly. Earth and the rest, which are illusory phenomena capable of performing their respective functions, are by nature the 10 male and female sugatas, the male and female bodhisattvas, and so on. This does not mean that the elements and so on are thus fabricated or transformed by virtue of the path. It means that they have that nature from the very beginning. So what is this saying? It's saying that earth and the rest, so earth together with the other elements of fire, wind, water, sky and space, all of these are originally naturally enlightened. They are Buddha. Earth and the rest, which are illusory phenomena, they are capable of performing their respective functions. So what function does earth perform? Well, earth performs the function of supporting. Then we have water. Water supports the function of gathering. Fire, the function of ripening. Wind performs the function of increasing, expanding, increasing. And space performs the function of accommodating. Without space, things would not be accommodated, right? Things would obstruct one another. So space prevents that obstruction. It accommodates, that's its function. So earth and the rest, all of these things are illusory phenomena capable of performing their respective functions. When it says they are illusory phenomena, well, this is to say that they lack reality. They are not truly established concrete phenomena. They lack reality, they are illusory phenomena, and they are capable of performing their own functions, as just described. These illusory phenomena, on the conventional level of experience, are capable of functioning in their respective ways, and by nature, these illusory phenomena of earth, water, fire, wind, and so on, are the 10 male and female sugatas, the male and female bodhisattvas, and so on. So these functions that earth and so on perform on the conventional level, these are not created or produced by anyone, right? They are natural functions, just natural functions that they automatically perform on the conventional level. Likewise, on the ultimate level, these same phenomena by their very nature are the 10 male and female sugatas. This is their nature. It is not produced or made this way by anyone or anything. It is simply their nature, their unfabricated nature. So, in terms of the elements, earth is Buddha Lokana, water is Buddha Mamaki, fire is Pandaravasini, wind is Samayatara, and space is Datvishvari. Likewise, the 5 aggregates are the 5 male Buddhas, the 5 male Sugatas. So, when one is not yet realized, these elements perform the function of the 5 elements of earth, water, and so on, earth, fire, and so on. And for someone who has realized, well, these same elements perform the function of the 5 female Sugatas. The male and female bodhisattvas will be explained in more detail below, so I won't say more about them here. And so on, it says. This does not mean that the elements and so on are thus fabricated or transformed by virtue of the path, right? As we've explained. It means that they have that nature from the very beginning. That is their primordial original nature. All phenomena, therefore, are by nature the state of nirvana. The 5 great elements are by nature the 5 female Buddhas. Earth is with the Buddha Lokana, water Mamaki, fire Pandaravasini, wind Samayatara, and space Datvishvari. So we already went through these, the 5 great elements. So from among them, earth, the element of earth is Buddha Lokana. So from in the experience, or we could say from the perspective of someone who has not yet realized reality, well, the element earth performs its conventional function of supporting. In the same way water performs its function, fire performs the function of burning, and so on. But from the perspective or in the experience of someone who has realized reality, well, these elements are no longer just supportive earth, gathering water, burning fire, and so on, but rather earth is then the Buddha Lokana, water is experienced as Mamaki, fire as Buddha Pandaravasini, wind as Samayatara, and space as Datvishvari. What is the function of space on the conventional level? It is to accommodate. It is that which accommodates everything else. This is really true, actually, if we think about it. Space is that which accommodates and makes possible, well, everything. Everything is made possible. The occurrence, the presence of everything is made possible by space. Without space, nothing could come into being. The world could not form. There could be no origin of the world and beings. Different traditions, different theories, spiritual and secular, have different ideas about how the world and beings came about, different origin theories. Could be the Big Bang or a scientific theory or the various religious ideas, explanations about origination. But in any case, all of that origination is made possible by space, right? It is accommodated by space. And from the perspective of realization, well, space, the element space, is Buddha Datvishvari, the female Buddha Datvishvari, which means the goddess of basic space, the goddess of Dhatu, of the basic space of phenomena. The basic space of phenomena is the source of the 5 primordial wisdoms, the source of all Buddhas, the source of everything. Similarly, the 5 aggregates of the Buddhas of the 5 families. Consciousness is Akshobhya, feeling Ratnasambhava, perception Amitabha, conditioning factors, which I think I translated as formations previously, is Amoghasiddhi, and form is Verochana. Okay, so the following passage I'm just going to read the transmission of, and not explain. And I'm not going to elaborate with any commentary, because no commentary is necessary. Well, if you wanted more commentary on the passage that follows, then you will need to look at Longchenpa's commentary on the Guyagama Tantra, Dispelling Darkness in the 10 Directions. This is translated into English already, and it's probably also translated into Chinese. So you can find a detailed explanation of the following passage in that commentary. The essential meaning, the crux of the following passage, I've already explained. So the main point, the main sort of understanding and principle, I have already explained. That same principle applies to everything that now follows. So I'm just going to read through the following passage. Like I said, for more explanation, one can refer to Longchenpa's commentary, Dispelling Darkness in the 4 Directions. There is a wonderful wealth of detail there. Each of the deities that are mentioned in the following passage are explained one by one with you could say their enlightened symbolism, their expression. All of those details are explained there. Okay, so the 4 consciousnesses are by nature 4 bodhisattvas. The eye consciousness is Kashiti Garbha, the ear consciousness Vajrapani, the nose consciousness Akasha Garbha, and the tongue consciousness Avalokiteshvara. The 4 sense objects are by nature the 4 beautiful goddesses that give rise to pleasure in the 4 consciousnesses. Form is the goddess of charm, sound the goddess of song, smell the goddess of garlands, and taste the goddess of dance. The 4 sense organs are by nature 4 bodhisattvas. The eye organ is Maitreya, the ear Sarvanivarana Vikambin, excuse my pronunciation, the nose Samantabhadra, and the tongue Manjushri. The 4 times are by nature the 4 offering goddesses. The past is the goddess of incense, the present the goddess of flowers, the future the goddess of the lamp, and indeterminate time the goddess of perfumed water. The body organ, body consciousness, tangible objects, and the physical sensation, that is great bliss bodhicitta, that comes from the latter are the 4 male wrathful deities. Because the secret vajra of the body organ, on encountering its object, overcomes and nullifies the other sense consciousnesses, these 4 are classified as the 4 powerful wrathful deities. Physical sensation is Amrita Kundalin. The body organ that feels is Hayagriva. The object of sensation is Mahabala, and the consciousness of physical sensation is Yamantaka. The 4 extreme views, such as eternalism and nihilism, are by nature the 4 female wrathful deities. The pure state of the view of eternalism is the lady of the iron hook. Similarly, the view of nihilism is the lady of the lasso, the view of self, the lady of the iron chain, and the view of attributes, the lady of the bell. The mind consciousness, the Vajra-like indestructible mind, whose nature is enlightenment, is by nature the Buddha Samantabhadra, the state in which there are never any phenomena to be rejected. The objects of that mind, compounded and uncompounded phenomena, are by nature Samantabhadri, the matrix of all phenomena. All the above are by nature the manifest, perfect enlightened state from the very beginning. They are not something that is newly accomplished by means of the path. Having commented in this way, drawing from his own textual tradition of tantras, Padmasambhava now cites other compatible scriptures, showing that even though things appear as the 3 mandalas, their root is bodhicitta, self-arisen gnosis, the single essence. Thus all compounded and uncompounded phenomena, the 10 directions, the 3 times, the 3 worlds, and so forth, and none other than one's own mind, as is stated in the Great Sovereign of Practices, the Victory over the 3 Worlds, where it says, if one realizes, in accordance with one's own mistaken mind or the power of the mind, that discerning consciousness is the very nature of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the like, then one is enlightened. If one fails to understand this, everything appears as the vessel and contents that constitute samsara. The 3 worlds are simply this. The great elements are simply this. And all phenomena abide within the mind abides in space. And space itself has no abode. Sorry, those last few lines were actually from the root text. Anyway, now continuing with the commentary. As it is said in the Guya Samajitantra, all phenomena abide within the mind. Everything that appears is nothing other than the appearance of one's own mind, and the mind itself abides in space. The nature of mind is unborn like space, and as for space, it is devoid of all characteristics, so it does not abide anywhere. In another scripture, too, we read that all phenomena are devoid of established reality and attributes. They cannot be classified in such terms as they are empty of themselves. They are by their very nature empty. For all phenomena, the stain of defilements has never from the very beginning existed, so they are primordially pure. For all phenomena, the darkness of obscuration has never from the very beginning existed, so they are completely radiant. For all phenomena, there have never been either countering factors or antidotes, so they are by nature nirvana. All phenomena are free of any diminishing of the 2 obscurations and of any gathering of the 2 accumulations, and so they are the manifest state of perfect enlightenment. This is the meaning or view of the great perfection. At this point, there is an old annotation in the root text. The method of the great perfection is perfection because the accumulations of merit and wisdom are perfect and complete, and it is great because the qualities of the result are spontaneously present. Okay, so we have covered the number of pages we needed to get through today, in spite of the confines of time. We'll stop here today and dedicate the merit, and then we will continue tomorrow.
Tamje zuba ni tomne ni be danam bamje yin ke ga na je balon tu tibe sole do do jo